Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Core Women Podcast. Today's guest is Kerry Ann King, who is the founder and CEO of Eluminate Labs, a software development company dedicated to creating inclusive solutions for human well-being. With expertise in well-being, productivity, and DEIB, Kerry Ann's journey to becoming a tech founder in her 50s is an inspiring story of resilience and adaptability. With a background in philosophy, psychology, and corporate wellness, she's passionate about helping women leverage their unique experiences to thrive in tech. Welcome, Kerry Ann.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I am thrilled that you're here. Let's get right into this.
Okay.
So before we jump into the professional aspects of your life, if you could describe your journey in one word to this point, what would that word be and why?
I would say boundary pushing. And I think it's because I would describe myself as having a pretty strong contrarian streak. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is the fact that I've been able to figure out how to be that person. And for the most part, be able to help people understand my vision and come along with me, or at least tolerate me being a gadfly in their environment, in their organization.
I love that. Pushing boundaries, being the contrarian, and then also being able to express what that is in a way that people can digest and say, I get it. I get it. I understand this. That's exciting. Can you share your journey from corporate wellness to founding a tech startup in your 50s? And really, that's such an important point of this podcast is what brought you forward? What brought you here to where you are today? What were those points that you can reflect on and say, these were important steps to getting me here?
So it's so interesting. For me, one of the biggest issues was always trying to find a way to have the impact that I wanted to have in the world that also felt comfortable to me. Early on in my career, I was actually getting a PhD in clinical psychology. But when it really came down to it, as much as I loved the intellectual aspects of that, as the mom of, at that time, 4 young kids, it felt like too much emotional pressure to me. So really a lot of my journey has been trying to find ways to help people that feel good for me to do, but are also impactful. And that's how I ended up in corporate wellness. After my third pregnancy, my fourth birth, because my last kids are a set of twins, I was in a dance class and the guy was like, well, you're a really good dancer. Have you ever thought about being an instructor? And I was like, no, but okay, that sounds really fun. And it was through that work that I ended up as a dance instructor for Exos, which is one of Google's main health and wellness vendors. And that gave me this incredible opportunity to be exposed to 2 organizations that are really focused on innovation, and really gave me a window into how technology can be great, what the process is in terms of developing technology. I got to be on a sprint team that was developing an internal app for our internal wellness at Google. So it gave me a window into a whole bunch of different aspects of the tech industry, even though my role, I started out as a dance instructor. I ended up being the director of community on the account. So I joke that I complained my way to the top, which is part of that thing about boundary pushing. And I think that was the biggest lesson I learned there, was how to do that in a way that showed that I wanted the team to succeed rather than just pushing boundaries for pushing boundaries' sake. But anyway, I left that job in 2022 to go to a biopharma that then restructured and I got laid off and I got a great severance package. And that gave me the opportunity to look around and say, what do I want the next 25 years to look like? And when I look around and see the way the tech industry has, the business model has shifted more and more towards extracting value from consumers, also extracting value from workers, move towards a way of building businesses that don't necessarily provide a high degree of value for the individual consumer, but are more focused on aggregating data that can then be sold. It really made me feel like there was an opportunity there to show that we can build tech enabled services that don't rely on extracting value from the people who use them. At least I would say extracting value that only redounds to the corporation as opposed to the individuals who receive the service.
Well, that's good insight. What I really appreciate about your story and your journey, there were these points where you were open to new experiences. Maybe if I should take on dance, I'm good at dance. I've been doing this. And that opened doors for you. Even going back a bit further about your experience in your doctoral program and saying, well, maybe this isn't the right thing for me right now. This is a little bit too much. And I can relate to that. And I'm sure other people can. And they feel this sense of guilt or burden about not moving forward with that goal. Because I did that with law school, got accepted. And I thought, oh man, how do I just turn around and go back home and what do I say and what do I do and all these different things, right? And that was a hard thing for me to do. And I'm sure there's other people out there who are listening today going through those transitions where they're also struggling with should I or should I not? And yet you did. You took the step away and you opened yourself up to new experiences, which I really love as you described how there's an opportunity for you as you worked in tech and discovered some things about it that influence you, how tech looks at the market, how it can be really manipulative in certain ways, but how you want to use it. So tell us more about some of the unique challenges and opportunities that you've experienced as a non-technical female founder in the tech industry, because you told us a bit about why you want to create this company, but tell us a bit more about the development of it, some of the challenges, some of the wonderful bonuses, the things that you've actually been able to cultivate with this company to make a change.
So, for me, the most important part of this is to recognize that in any situation, we hire experts to do things that we don't necessarily know how to do. You hire a plumber to fix your plumbing. You hire an electrician if you have a fuse that keeps blowing. And we kind of tend to think of technology and particularly software engineering as this magical thing that only people with a certain kind of talent can do. And how can we possibly understand it? And it's not that it's not skillful work, and it's not that it doesn't require a certain amount of skill and intelligence. But if you think of it more as like, would you not get your plumbing fixed because you aren't a plumber and you won't understand what the plumber did? That's an insane way to look at it. You would never do that. So if you have technical challenges that you want to solve, the approach to take is to find the people that you trust to explain to you what they're doing so that you can understand it and evaluate the work. And I will tell you, I have definitely, if you want to talk about challenges, I have definitely worked with software engineers who have kind of had this attitude that they're like a wizard and I'm, the naive princess and everything that they say is over my head. And of course it is. I have done a couple of software coding classes. I'm not completely naive. But the reality is, frequently, if that's the messaging that you're getting from your technical team, the issue might be that they don't know how to explain it. And if they can't explain it well, that's their problem, not yours. Part of the technical team's job is to understand what they're doing well enough and be able to explain it well enough that you can proceed without feeling like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Interesting point, because I do think coming from not a technical background at all, but growing up with the tech industry, having it always be a part of our lives, because I'm 55 years old. I grew up in California. I grew up next to Silicon Valley. I went to Berkeley. A lot of my friends were CS majors, computer science majors, right? And we saw companies coming in to recruit these young folks early on because we were looking at not just applications, but we were looking at hardware issues. We were looking at systems at that point. And so we're not tech savvy. It's just, as you said, sometimes the language is a barrier. Sometimes the communication skills can be a barrier. This kind of flows right into my next question very well. How do you, as a CEO, take on some of these challenges to really help your company as well as other companies really foster that inclusivity and well-being with their products in the workplace, to develop a new workplace culture, to massage and support communication, breaking down silos, gaps between generations? Because tech, we may see some of those gaps between our generations because of fear, because of lack of courage, because of lack of communication, lack of language, the same language. So, how do you help that as a business owner?
Everybody who is in the industry who's not technical, if you're looking for people, it's really important to make sure that you hire people who are willing to talk and explain. It's one of the things I love about my team. They are extremely good at explaining what's going on and extremely open to explaining it to me. The flip side of that, of course, is me being open about questions that I have. I think it's one of the things that sometimes happens is people don't want to ask a question of a technical person because they're either afraid they won't understand the answer or appear naive or stupid. The problem with that approach is it puts you automatically in this position of being a person who doesn't know. You either don't know because you didn't ask, or you're acting like you don't know when maybe you could understand it if you would just ask the question. So I think for me, there's kind of like this fundamental idea of collaboration, making sure that everybody's willing to talk through what's going on and not being afraid to ask questions. As far as how that goes out into the world for Illuminate Labs, our app that we're working on, Finn, right now, Positive Productivity, is really geared towards adults who have been diagnosed later in life with some sort of productivity challenge. We're not necessarily targeted only at people who have ADHD, but just the general population of people who find out in their 40s, sometimes even in their 50s, that maybe they have a neurological challenge that causes them to have trouble with organization, as opposed to finding out when they were 15 or 16 or even 20 or 30. The purpose of the app is really to help people understand their productivity style, feel less anxiety around productivity by understanding how they work. Because quite frankly, if you've gotten to 40 or 50 and you just discover that you have a learning disability or ADHD, you have a whole bunch of stuff that you do to cope. And some of it's probably adaptive. Some of it's probably just fine. What you need to be able to do is separate the wheat from the chaff. What are the things that you do that are adaptive? What are the things that you do that, whether or not they're the best way to do something, they work for you, so they're okay? And what are the things that are stressing you out and probably you need to think about rethinking, rewiring your pathways around that particular type of question or task or productivity issue? So really, that's the goal for everything that we offer, to be in that vein. Things that reduce people's stress, help them feel as good about themselves and their way of doing things as possible, increasing people's access to data that is meaningful to them without using that data to extract information about them and sell it. So that's really kind of the fundamentals of what we're trying to achieve.
I think this is so important because when you're talking about the app and how it helps those with neurodiversity, be it whatever the condition is, it helps them with the productivity challenges, which would help support them in their confidence, their courage to also understand how they can really process and define what their productivity process is, so to speak. So I know that when I was going to Berkeley, for some reason, I wasn't able to understand Spanish. Okay. It was really interesting because I had taken German in high school. I knew that I wasn't like the most linguistic person, but I also knew that somehow I compensated really well. But when I got to college, my counselor had not said, "Hey, you need to take 3 years to like just dismiss altogether that requirement." I took 2 years in high school, and so I was stuck taking another year. And I thought, am I going to take another year of German or I'm going to take a different language? So I thought, well, Spanish probably would be easy for me, right? Like it's probably
Well, and
easier
you're in
than German.
California,
You're in
right?
Cal,
Like, yeah.
yeah, right. So so I thought, well, maybe okay, let's see how this works. It didn't work out very well. So when it came to the second semester, it was all audio and it was all conversational. And I thought, well, why isn't this working for me? Why isn't this working? And I went to my counselor and I said, hey, listen, I'm studying. I took this as a summer course. I'm studying all the time. I'm not sure why I'm not getting it. And so they ran me through a bunch of tests and they said, you have an audio processing deficit. For some reason, you've gotten to this point by your adaptive skills, right? So what's working for you? What isn't? We went through all that, right? So I like that you've created an app to help support people through that and their process because I didn't have anything like that. I had to just figure it out on my own and also figure out where do I go? Who's going to help me with this? Who's going to understand me?
Exactly. It's so interesting because I think what sounds like happened is your counselor did not throw the baby out with the bathwater. They didn't say all of that other stuff that you did that was adaptive that got you through German. That's not good. That's not that is, you were just kind of cheating by having some sort of an adaptive approach. That adaptive approach is what led you to succeed, right? It's part of what got you into Berkeley. So
Yeah, absolutely.
retaining that while recognizing areas where you need support is really what we're all about. And allowing people to also just recognize that the stuff that they get done with those adaptive techniques counts. Because I think that's another thing that people with productivity challenges really struggle with is if they're a person who tends to wait till the last minute to do something and they do that and they do a good job, we don't want that person to experience the stress that that causes. But if there's some way that that works for you, rather than turn around and say, what you need to do is become a person who works on the same project for 1 hour a day for 6 weeks and then completes it and ties a bow around it in the last hour of that last 6 weeks, you're asking the person to be a different person. You're not asking them to improve their productivity. You're asking them to be a different person. So really kind of working with people to help them adapt their adaptation so that they cause less stress, either for themselves and sometimes for their colleagues, but also not negating the success that the person has had doing things in a way that is adaptive for them on some level.
And this is what I really appreciate about what you're creating here is it's not just an app, but you're infusing the philosophy, the value, the psychology behind all of this to help support the other, to help support people. You're not just, as you said, extracting information to manipulate that to use to profit from that. You're actually creating something to help support people in your community to lessen their overwhelm and not completely isolate them from who they are and their own process and their own process of adaptability. We all learn things over time that work for us. So you can't discount something that's actually worked for somebody. Like you said, doing something at the last minute. Maybe that's really worked for some people. My process is going to look different than your process. Your process is going to look different from maybe, your child's process. To not discount that is so important as you are constructing something so important like this application. So we've talked about so much from your milestones, what you've looked at, your reflection points, as well as what brought you to this point and what you developed. And having developed that, in midlife. And that's another really important aspect of this conversation is how does it feel for you, Kerry Ann, as you've come through your journey to develop something new, to be so creative, to offer something new to the world with all the experiences that you've had and creating this team where they can function together and create this wonderful product to support others. How does that feel for you? And how can people find your app? Is it out already, or when is it going to launch?
So, how does it feel? First, it feels great. I mean, there's definitely times when it feels scary, right? It's like it has less to do with age and more to do with what I think every startup founder feels at some point, especially when you're self-funding and trying to bootstrap the company. It doesn't always feel comfortable. And that's deliberate for me. I'm choosing to do something that's not comfortable because one of my adaptations is I need a little friction to get me moving. There's also an aspect of that that's really about my feelings about how the economy around startups works, right? One of the problems with venture capital is it can prop up businesses that aren't realistically real businesses. What is it? Last year, there was an article in the Times that the most successful startups last year were startups that were made to wind down other startups, sell the furniture, figure out the Cobra for the employees. The venture capital space can serve as a way of just concentrating a bunch of wealth in the same small group of people and then create these companies that grow like little mushrooms. They sprout, they get giant for a day, and then they die back, and you wonder what the heck happened. But I digress. So that's for me, that's how it feels. It feels exciting, it feels gratifying, and it feels a little bit uncomfortable. And that's on purpose. As far as the app is concerned, it is in the store. It's in the App Store and the Play Store. It's called Fin Positive Productivity, Fin like finish.
Mhm.
It's free in the store now. We also offer in-app coaching with a subscription. So if you choose to have a coach, that coach will be able to see your to-do list, your list of daily, weekly, monthly routines. You'll be able to chat with that person about a particular routine or task. I can tell you right now, one of the most common things we have to do is tell someone that something is a project, not a task. Everybody out there, if you put clean out the garage as a task on your list for the new year, that's a project. It's not a task. Please break it down. Do it for me.
Well, that's wonderful. So people know where to find it. It is available.
Yeah, so it is available, and right now it's free. Coaching is by subscription, and we're doing some workshops in the new year for values-based goal planning. So really helping people identify not their values necessarily, but what they value. When you make choices, how do you really spend your time? And can we align your goals with those things so that you can succeed?
I like that distinction too between values and what you value. That is important. We have covered a lot here, but as we come to the close of the interview, my last question for you is what advice would you give to women considering a midlife career pivot into tech or entrepreneurship?
First of all, I would say don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Being an entrepreneur is uncomfortable. This is a story my mother used to tell. She was on a panel when she was an entrepreneur, and every person on the panel said, yes, you need to have 6 months of your expenses saved up before you start a business. You have to do this, you have to do that. And they got to her and she said, I don't know. I had no money. I had a 4-year-old. I was a single mom. And maybe if you are a single mom with a 4-year-old, that's the thing that makes you make that next phone call. That's the thing that makes you spend that extra 45 minutes figuring something out because you don't have a choice. So I do believe that a little bit of friction is good for people. And if you're going into tech, just remember you've probably hired a plumber. You've probably had someone cut your hair. You've hired experts before. This is no different. You're hiring an expert to do something that you interact with every day. You interact with technology every day. You know what it's supposed to look like. You know how it's supposed to feel. That person who you're hiring to help you is the expert who's supposed to help you, not a wizard who can do things that you'll never understand. Just the way your plumber, maybe your plumber is also a wizard, but your plumber also does things that you can understand when they've come and fixed things in your house.
That is a great tip. Thank you, Kerry Ann, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was super fun.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you. You can follow Kerry Ann King on LinkedIn and at illuminatelabs.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.